Recording is in progress. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another play date with Momentus. I'm here with Jake. Jake, how are you?
I am good. How are you, Charlie?
I'm well. I'm well and good.
Are you
Just want to.
levitating above Hollywood right now?
I am floating in a drone above Hollywood. I don't know if you can
Oh,
tell.
wow. Wow, the
Yeah,
production value of Momentus has really gone up. I see the last Movie Magic episode really
the
paid the
thousands
bills.
of tickets we sold. I just here we are. I'm doing the big stunts now. Um, so we have a lot to cover today, but I want to do a couple of quick orders of business before we start because Jake has a lot to share. He's planned this for weeks, and so we just want to make sure we like really cover all of the things. Um, if you have any questions, please use the Q&A box because that's how we'll be able to tell. We are turning on chat now as well. I think the chat should be on. We just double check. Yep, chat is live. But I'd love to hear from you. Where you're from, favorite color, favorite thing about Jake. Also,
ASL.
yep,
Do folks still
ASL.
do folks know what that is anymore?
They don't. They
Don't
don't.
ask you, don't ask, don't do
Are we on ICQ or AOL right now? That's all.
that. AOL and some messenger for sure.
Okay.
The doors
Um,
closing and opening.
yep.
Man, those are deep in the
Deep cuts. Deep cuts. But we
yeah.
have a lot to talk about today. So class one is available on YouTube if you want to rewatch that as well. So we built off of story and we watched Jake's short film, and we got into a lot of shenanigans, and it was very, very good time. Good. Oh, yep. ICQ. There. See, some of us are old.
What's ICQ?
Oh, ICQ is an early messaging platform like AOL Instant Messenger that had a very prominent ding sound that we all remember if we did it. Up, see, 40, yep, 42 F and Y. So
Yeah, very good. All the olds are in the house.
yeah, we are.
It's so weird to me that I don't know what ICQ is. I
You
feel
are
like I feel like
probably
I
young.
was on the up, like I was too busy playing Sims and stuff, I guess.
Oh my God.
ICQ.
The,
Okay, wait a minute. Whoa, this is bringing back. Whoa,
it's like a little flower
That's
logo.
that's a deep memory.
Deep
There,
cut.
the uh the graphics are straight from Minesweeper. Is that what it was?
Yeah,
That's
it was
Minesweeper
very
graphics.
early days. It was not fancy, Jake.
If you
We
clicked on the
had the
wrong thing, your
dial-up
screen
internet.
exploded.
Yeah. There was a lot
That's
of sound. Some of these people
that's
don't even know what sound
incredible.
the modem sounds.
Oh, I do know
Yeah.
those. I do know that. I had speaking of like movie magic and old computers, we had this one of our earliest computers. I don't know the program. I know it had Dragon Slayer. Did you ever play that? A little guy, like a little
Yeah.
medieval guy runs across and he steps on the little thing and it opens and lower stuff. And we also had something that was like it was a movie, like a movie generator. And you would like take little figures of like people and put them on the screen in settings and move them around and kind of record it, and then you could like play it
Yeah.
back almost like stop motion animation with graphics. And so like I didn't realize like I was making little movies just on like the old DOS computers back in the day with this really,
Yeah.
I wish I could remember what the software was. Maybe someone else that's an old in here would remember as well. uh, but
Well,
yeah,
speaking of good transition, movie making, it's come from the dark
yeah.
ages when we were young and to now. And there's so many more ways to make movies now. Class one, we talked a lot about writing. I don't know if you want to recap any of that that we discussed, but
I don't
a lot.
remember what we talked about.
No, of course not. Why would you? There's a lot. We hinted at a list of resource books that we just sent out. Our team just sent out, and we're going to talk
Yeah.
about some great resources too. Is there?
It's ooh, it's hot. Ooh, it's fresh.
Oh,
It's fresh off. Ooh, it's fresh off the press. Ooh, it's a
so
hot.
that's just been emailed to you as well. We can also get you a little listy poo here in the chat, and
Ooh, there it
let's
is.
just kick this sucker off.
Mm-hmm.
We talked a lot about story and getting the story onto the page last time. Let's talk
Mm-hmm.
about getting from the page to screen. What let's start with what are the key elements of filming anything? Like what do you need to have to go and film something right now?
A camera.
Okay. Okay.
Number one, a camera, but
See that one coming.
didn't see it coming. The difference is speaking of, back when we were younger, like, I was filming stuff in my parents' camcorder that had the mini DV like cassettes that you would put in. And because I didn't have any editing software, it wasn't readily available. You had to do what was called cutting in camera. And so you would like hit record, film something, stop recording. And then if you felt like you got it, then you would move on to the next scene and you would hit record that, stop it, watch playback. And if you had to shoot it again, then you'd rewind right up until the first scene you shot, stop it, and cut in camera. And it was exhilarating.
Yeah.
But and I filmed like a little short film in my middle school for I think it was theater appreciation class. And I came up with this story kind of on the fly, like Jake in Quarantine, where there was an arsonist in the school and we had to figure out who it was. And we were interviewing teachers and students about like who was the arsonist. And it turned out to be like our science teacher, who was like a really cool, but like wacky older dude. And this is a tangent. I think I may have talked about this last time, but like there was an effect in my camcorder that could blur if you pressed it. So when we did interviews, we did an anonymous interview. So I would like have the camera on our interviewer, and then as I panned, I would press the blur button so it would blur their face. So all that is to say that like now we live in the age of supercomputers in our pockets. I filmed Jake in Quarantine on this.
Yeah.
So it can be done. And even if you just want to test shoot stuff, like, I mean, I have apps on my phone that like real cinematographers use. I have a light meter on here as a pocket light meter that oh no, it wants me to give it permissions to do things. I don't want to do that. But there's like a light meter that tells you, like, it gives you light readings if you want to learn to do that. I think that's a free app because I don't like to pay for apps. There's another one on here. These are all updated. I haven't opened them in a while. That's really, really cool. Is it this one? Sorry, I know this is really fun for everybody to watch me do.
It's like radio theater where I get to listen to you look at ads,
Yeah.
which is cool.
This is actually my app rating. Okay, this is a very, very cool app. This is called Cadridge. It's CADRAGE. And let's see, it'll probably show a picture of me. Oh, hi. Okay. What's great about this app, what's fun to learn about this app, is they have every camera on the market is loaded into this app. So right now, that frame you just saw is what it would look like if I had a Sony Venice shooting 4K at 17:9 aspect ratio with a generic zoom lens that went 18 to 200 millimeters, right? Like if you had
name one more time.
Do what? Cadridge of the app.
Yeah.
CADRAGE. Now that is a paid app, I'm pretty sure, but it was when I discovered it, I thought it was so cool that I said, I'm going to pay for it. So on here, you have like all of the cameras that are available on the market, everything from Arri Alexas to the Sony Venice, the Red, all of them. So you can pick your camera, and then you can pick like the lenses that you'd put on it. Now, me, when I had to learn about lenses, I have upstairs in my computer a little viewfinder, a little director's viewfinder, and it's like this big, and you can set aspect ratios to it and focal length by like telescoping it. When you look in it, it gives you a little frame. This is how like directors and cinematographers used to check the framing of their lenses. Now they have the big shotgun things that they can actually put real lenses on and look through. All that to say is you don't need all that stuff, but if you want to start learning how to make films right and how they make films, these are tools that are in our pockets that you can start playing with and start understanding cameras and lenses and focal lengths. And like when I'm on, it's kind of a challenge I give myself on set as an actor, and it's a way to bond with the camera department as well. Is I'll see where the camera is, I'll see where I am, and I'll roughly know if we're shooting anamorphic or not, because that kind of changes the focal length. Based on where I am and what the coverage is, I guess the lens that they're on.
Oh, that's cool.
And I get really close a lot of the time. Sometimes they're filming in a weird millimeter that's a few millimeters off or whatever, but like I can guess if we're like on a 50 or 75 or 100. And it does two things. It lets me bond with the camera department, but it also tells me my frame without me having to look at the monitor. So I know based on where they are and what lens they're on, I can tell if they're, you know, if they're far away, but if they're shooting on a 150 or 200, they're really close to me and the background's all blown out, right? And these apps can teach you those things early on that you might not be using yet because you're probably not renting gear. But if you start thinking in that way, thinking like filmmakers think, and start framing your shots in depth. There was, I think we may have talked about this last time, where I read something great that was like, you know, a frame is not just a frame, it's a window, and you should compose your shots in depth so that the background complements foreground and vice versa. And if you start thinking that way and thinking like, oh, if I had a lens like that, what would I put in the background, or where would I put the camera here? You can start to elevate that really simple stuff that you could otherwise be doing.
And I mean, you know, someone know you as an actor, and you're obviously do a lot more than that, directing and writing and things. And I think I was talking to Jared Padalecki a few weeks ago about you, and
you know him.
I mean,
you
I
know
just
him
talk to him sometimes, like I sometimes
wow.
just. But he was talking to me about you, which is the more important thing, right?
Okay, good.
Yeah. And he commented on what a technician you are, and some like from a craft perspective. And I have to think that knowing all that information, you're blocking where you stand, how big your gesture or your sort of expression are, knowing camera is like real tight or further away. Like, does that factor into the work that you're doing? Are you aware of that technical process while you're acting, or are you just sort of focusing on what you're doing?
It's at this point, it's a bit of a marriage. I think you definitely try not to. I try to, me personally, I try to understand. Like, I can't help but be involved and interested just because I'm involved and interested in the process. So I think of all of those technical aspects right up until the moment we start shooting. And then you do have to let it go, and you have to not worry about it, and you have to do your job as an actor. And but it doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt sometimes to know like what angles look better and what doesn't. And I think you try to, you know, it's uh, there's a lot of philosophies, and I think it depends on the project you're doing. In some ways, I think like as an actor, you want to be operating outside of all of that, and that's the hope. But if like if you know what's going on, it can help get the shot that's needed as well. But it's just for me personally, I just have a natural interest in it, a natural like, and I hope the hope is that learning all of that when it comes time for me to direct something professionally, if I'm hopefully most likely starring in it as well, which is a big workload, that like that I'll be able to still be streamlined in that way of like, if I'm in a scene and I'm like, hey, we need to adjust something, I can still go, but you're still on the 50, right? Okay, so I know the frame. I'm hoping that'll just help me streamline that process, because you know, running back and forth from in front of and behind the camera is it's a lot. You know, that'll take time. One thing I'd learned, and again, I may have mentioned this before, when I shadowed Steve Robin on Walker. So when I did Walker, I got to shadow Steve Robin, which was their producing director, and Richard Speight, which was an incredible experience because I learned so many different things from the both of them. But one thing I found when I was working with Steve, we were scouting the locations that he was going to be shooting in, and about the third location, I stopped and I said, Steve, look where we are right now. We had just walked into the room, just walked into it. That's all. It was a set. It was one of the sets on the soundstage. We just walked in and we're just looking around. I said, "Where are you? Are you thinking you're standing where you think the camera will be?" And he goes, "Yes." I said, "And am I standing where you would put me in this scene?" And he goes, "Yes." I was like, it was such a wild like discovery of, as a director, he walked into a room differently than I walked into a room as an actor, even though we weren't there to shoot a scene. We knew that a scene was going to be shot there. and at first it made me nervous because I was like, oh shoot, like my brain doesn't always think about that. It isn't thinking about that side. And I thought that like, oh, I'm gonna have to develop that. That's scary. But then I had this other thought that followed it up with, well, if I'm gonna direct a scene, why don't I just walk into it as an actor? And then I can look around and go, the camera will be there.
There you go. Yeah.
And then I'm here, I put myself in front of the key light, we'll do fill light, the camera would be there because I know where it would be as an actor. And then it gave me a sense of relief all over again of like, okay, maybe I just have to adapt and approach it from what I know. And still accomplish the same thing.
I mean, we think about directors that were actors, Eastwood and Gibson and all these guys who are learn the technical proficiency. Clooney, there's so many. There's almost a different feel to a film that's directed by a former actor or a current actor. There's a different way of approaching all that, and that's great that you like connected those dots. You didn't feel like, oh, I'm not thinking like a director enough yet, but rather this is part of the process for you. That's great.
Yeah, yeah. Because at the end of the day, you're shooting you're shooting a story, and but you do have to know where to put the camera. A lot of people are going to be waiting around to say, where the hell do we plunk down the camera? And a lot of that's you prepare, but a lot of it's make 'em ups too. A lot of it's panic, I think, on the fly, and you have a game plan. That's one thing Jensen had taught me, because he, I asked him, he's directed episodes of Supernatural and whatnot, and he was just like, make a game plan, and then like prepare for it to go wrong, and then just make a decision. And then another thing that Steve Robin taught me on Walker, or no, Rich taught me on Walker, he said, day one, make sure that your first AD, your first assistant director, gives you an easy scene to shoot. Day one of production. Everyone's showing up day one. The clapboard says like, day one on it. This is your first thing you're going to film. He said, make sure your AD makes it something simple so you can complete it and say moving on. Because on the first day, everyone's waiting to see if you know your shit. Everyone's waiting to see like if they can trust you. And if cast and crew do not trust a director, then you like mutinies are on board, or like everyone's like, all right, we're going to go into protect ourselves mode. And I've been there, we are like, all right, I'll protect myself on this one. But if you can show confidence of like, moving on, got it in the can, let's go, then everyone goes, okay, we're good, we're in good hands, and we can keep moving forward. So that was a good piece of advice as well.
Yeah, a little morale boost in the beginning there.
Yeah, it just gives everyone confidence.
So Nancy asks, what made you want to start directing? Where did that come, like that impulse come from?
It's been like a pain in my ass for years kind of thing. I don't know. It's just been something that like I've always sort of felt compelled to do. And it was really difficult to contend with early on in my acting career, because I felt this natural pull of wanting to have a larger capacity than just an actor, and to be telling stories from beginning to end. And when I was younger, I used to think of it as wearing, like literally taking off a hat and putting another hat on. Like I couldn't exist in both worlds at the same time early on, because I was still learning to be an actor, still am. And so when I felt that sort of natural flow of like, oh, I'm thinking or feeling like a director now, wanting to understand and study that. Like if I watch a film, I can either watch it as an actor, I can watch it as a director, I could watch it as a cinematographer, I could watch it as a writer. Watch the same film multiple times from a different angle and get different things from it. So I found it really difficult actually for the first 10 years of implementing that into my life. And then on top of that, about 10 years ago, I really dedicated myself to the writing process and started reading all of the writing books out there. And I was already writing, but I was just continuing to write script after script, just because I wanted to understand the mechanics of story. And I heard this thing online the other day, and I thought it was really great and true. Peaks and plateaus. This guy was talking about like peaks and plateaus, and because you get to you rise up, you learn something, and then you plateau. And you ride that plateau for a long time. It can be really frustrating and infuriating. But if you keep working and keep working, you learn new things. And what happens then is a dip. You start to suck again, just a little bit. But once those things sink in and become a part of you, then you have another rise. And then what comes next? plateau, and a plateau, and a plateau, and you work and you work and you work and you learn, and then you suck a little bit because you're learning this new stuff you put into yourself, and then it clicks again, and then and that's kind of, I think, has been my experience. And so for writing, when I started getting into the mechanics of writing, my writing got worse. I finished less, and then at some point I just like finally finished a script. It's not great. It's not good. No one's going to see it. But like, it was a few years ago, I finished it and I was like, great, I can finish scripts again. And then since then, I finished one big script and I've done rewrites on it, and just like, it's just sort of the process. So that's just been my experience of like just feeling a natural like gravitational pull towards directing or writing, and also just being like really stubborn and wanting to understand things. And now I've, after 20 years of that, it is much more fluid for me. Those feelings still come of like, oh, maybe I should just be an actor now, or maybe I need to write something. And I just trust that process. But they don't feel like hats anymore. It feels like a Sherlock hat that has two different brims and just kind of, yeah.
Rachel asks, and you don't, obviously we want to keep all this in confidence, but do you have a script in the works that you would like to direct? If so, what's the genre?
See, that's my problem. Is I don't like, I know all the kinds of stories I want to tell, and then like none of them at the same time. And I start stuff and stop stuff. And, I have a buddy who we used to write together, and then he wrote this one script that he was like, you just super interested in. And like, it's been kind of that hill like rise thing, but they just attached a great director. And he's like, I don't know, man, like it could happen, it couldn't happen, but it was something that he enjoyed writing and people responded to it. I don't know if it's my attention span or what. So I'm always developing stuff, like, always developing stuff. And it's kind of an addicting trap. Like developing something's really, really fun because it's a puzzle. And you're trying to figure out all the answers to these puzzles or possible answers. And so like, there'll be times where I have started like, and I'm in the process of that right now, actually. Where the story started as one thing. And as I sort of follow the rabbit trails and distill it down, it resembles nothing like it started. And it's something completely different. And sometimes that's good. And then sometimes you're like, oh, shit. You start to make your way back. And then I'll leave that project for a while. And then I'll come back and be like, have this clarity of like, oh, yeah, it should start up here. And as I start to work on it again, I can see how I got to the distillation. So then you start to go like, well, which one is correct? And the truth is, you don't really know until it clicks. For me, I'm someone that really, I've learned that like, I really shouldn't start writing and can't start writing the script until I've seen the whole movie in my head. Like there comes a time for me where it's like, I see it, all of it, it's there. And I put in the hours and I write it down. And that's constantly what I think I'm working towards when I'm developing, is like waiting for the click to go, oh, that's this story. There's this movie called The Conversation that was written and directed by Francis Ford Coppola. And I love this film, and I just bought it because they had DVD commentary on it. And DVD commentary, I know we don't have a lot of physical media anymore, but if you can get your hands on it, or if you can get like a digital download that has DVD commentary, this is some of the best film advice you can get, is just watching films while being talked to by the filmmakers who made it. So I watched the commentary of this with Francis Ford Coppola, and I found it so relieving, because he wrote The Conversation, and he goes, much like most scripts you write, it didn't receive a lot of fanfare. Like nobody wanted to make it. So he went and made The Godfather, which no one knew that was going to be what it was, but he made that because he wanted to make The Conversation. So he goes and he makes The Godfather. It's a huge success. Suddenly people are like, what do you got? What do you want to make? And he's like, I've got this small film called The Conversation about a guy who records a conversation. And he's the best in the business of he can record anyone at any time, but 3 people are already dead because of how good he is. Like, it's this really gripping, slow, amazing film. But he talks about that. He also talked about how he tends to like leapfrog his writing. he said, he's like, I'll start to develop something, write something, but then something older leaps it. And then that's the thing I do. And then once that's done, like there's something else, and then the old thing leaps it. He says he abandons projects a lot and comes back to them. I abandon projects all the time.
Yeah.
And but there's been things I've gone back. The first screenplay that I finished after a few years of a drought was a script I had started writing and abandoned 5 years prior. So if you're trapped, abandon it sometimes. Go back and see what else honestly, go back and see what you have that you started that you weren't ready to write. That's generally, I think, the experience is that you stop something because you haven't had the life experience to finish it yet. And if you just let it cook in the background and you let life happen to you, sometimes you go back and go, oh, I didn't know what I needed to know yet. And it's great because it's there waiting for you and you can pick it back up.
Well, there's some like what I love about that, I think from the directing side and trusting that intuition that like Martha Graham calls it like a divine dissatisfaction or whatever that is, right? That says, hey,
the divine dissatisfaction of the artist.
Something's cooking and will always be cooking. And if you allow yourself to give it room or abandon it a little bit or kill your darlings a little, they come back, they process in a way creatively in the ether that then comes back to you. That requires a little bit of confidence, a little bit of like resource, and having learned a lot of this stuff or been through it enough that you trust you trust that your creative process will work itself out eventually. How do you know like, so when you were filming, you know, your COVID project or anything, acting or directing, how do you know when it's finished or when it's done, when you've gotten enough from what you set out to do? Speaking of dissatisfaction.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, you know, like there's all like you'll always go back and be like, oh, I would do that differently now. I mean, like when you that's a great thing about these commentaries as well, is that you get a lot of honesty from directors. It'll be like, you know, like Spielberg said that the ending of Close Encounters of the Third Kind, which I won't spoil it if you haven't seen it, you should. He said, he goes, I wasn't a father when I filmed that scene when he gets on the ship. He goes, had I made that film after becoming a father, I never would have ended the movie that way. And that's Steven Spielberg saying that, like, I wouldn't end it that way now, but I ended it that way then because that's where I was at in my life. And because, like, in his life, he would have been willing to make that decision. So, of course, his main character would have. But now he would not have made that same decision. So the movie would have been different, but he can't change it. And you know, it's like, I think that's, you just gotta, you make your art, whatever it is, for your time that you're in, and then there's nothing you can do about it. And like, you'll just know, you'll say like, what's great is sometimes you have a deadline. Sometimes you're like, the deadline is when this is finished. It is finished now because it is the deadline. But also, like, yeah, you've also just gotta just, you know, trust your instincts and say, I've squeezed the juice and now it's time to let it go out to the world so I can get on with the next thing. You know, I can't be precious about this stuff. I mean, some people take all this really, really seriously, and I just think you gotta like screw it. We're all gonna die anyway. Make your art and put it out there.
We're all gonna die anyway, everybody.
Memento mori. I think it's a positive thing. Memento mori. You must remember that you too will pass, and so like, what's the big deal? Like, just make art and
do it.
make art and die.
Dora the Explorer, just do it. Just make it.
Just
do it.
Do it.
So we've covered some key elements of filmmaking, some cool apps,
yes,
the process of filming and the process for you of directing and acting and those pieces. But let's talk a little bit about the book list. So it's been emailed to you, and I'm going to put it back in the chat again. I want to make sure we spend some time on these books because this is a treasure trove of resources, and maybe you could speak a little bit about each one, just a line or two about what.
Look at this. Look what I did here. Look at this set design. Look at my little set design. This
isn't
all of them. It's not all of them, but they were together on the bookshelf, so I pulled them together. This is the truncated list of what you will see on Jake's movie magic Jake's movie magic book recommendation list for people who like to learn about the magic of making movies. Disclaimer: there will be no actual magic.
Your marketing prowess is really showing in that title.
But that's some of the books there that you'll see on the list. And look, again, this is all just me. There's probably books out there that I haven't read or that whatever. But let's see what we have on here. Of
Story by
these
Robert
books,
McKee. I mean, this is
I
centuries
like
worth.
story. Yeah, like Story by Robert McKee is kind of like the place you start so you can start sucking. Because when you, like I said before, when you learn the rules, you gotta suck butts for a while, but it's okay because if learning those rules allows
I'm
you to
sorry.
break them later. Suck butts. It's an industry term. Suck butts.
Okay.
But you'll get better. You'll get better later because you'll know the rules and you'll know how to bend them as they often should be. So yeah, that screenplay, Adventures in the Screenplay. So in the Screen Trade by William Goldman.
Amazing.
I love books like this. I don't have another one. I actually Making Movies is a lot like it, and Rebel Without a Crew. These are very sort of similar books, and that two of these were written by directors, and one of these was written by a screenwriter. What I love about these and like Ed Zwick's Hit Flops and Other Illusions, which I hope is on that list. If it's not, we'll have it is okay. Is I love reading. I think I talked about this last time. I love reading stories from people who have succeeded in our industry because it's so easy to only see their successes. And when someone's writing books like this, it's usually because they want to talk about their failures, because it's educational. It's sort of like lowering down the ladder to the rest of us down here who are trying to climb up. And I think it's super beneficial to read about how the most successful in our industry, how they struggled, because I think it certainly helps me in times of doubt to be like, okay, well, so and so pushed through it, or oh, so and so went through this exact same thing, and here's how they got around it. So those are great. There's books on producing on here. So Christine Vachon, she has a film company out of New York called Killer Films. Killer Films out of New York. And there's another one that's a producing book that's similar to this that I can't remember. But again, this is really how to do independent film, especially in New York. But my favorite part about this book is she's one of the few people who has broken down every department on a film set and department heads, and more than that, she talks about their personalities and idiosyncrasies and which departments gossip, which departments need like they have more egos, or ones that just want to be talked to straight. And I think that's really beneficial because especially if you're a director, you're leading the UN. Basically, everyone's speaking different languages, but you're all trying to get together towards a common goal. So books like this really help. This is like a great just film history book, Pictures at a Revolution. The byline is 5 movies and the birth of the new Hollywood. So it was the Oscar race, and I forget what year it was, but you can see Bonnie and Clyde. It was the year Bonnie and Clyde was nominated. But there were 5 movies that year that were all nominated. Oh, sorry, Bonnie and Clyde, The Graduate, Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, In the Heat of the Night, and Dr. Dolittle.
In the same year, holy
in the same year, and the Dr. Dolittle one is just insane.
was...
But again, it's just film history. It's where we come from, and again, like you get to learn how Warren Beatty, like just by pure brute force and confidence, just like made his career and made these movies happen. And so those are really exciting. There's another one I didn't put on the list that's called Raging Easy Riders and Raging Bulls, which is like very famous as well. But I didn't put it on here because it's quite sad. It's kind of a sad book because it's more just about it's about that sort of the era of exciting filmmaking, but it's also just full of just like the saddest parts of all of that. So I'm glad I read it, but it's like I have a hard time recommending it because it's just like, oof, it's a gut punch. And this one was a surprise. Alexander McKendrick on filmmaking. My wife got me this on a whim. She had never heard of it. I had never heard of it. She brought it home and she was like, maybe there's something in here. I dog ear books, all of my books, regardless of what kind of books they are. And some books don't have many dog ears. Some books have a lot. And I do that because, I'm a big highlighter and underliner, because I like to reference books, all kinds of books. And I like to be able to pick them off my shelf and spend 15 minutes leaping through the dog ears and the highlights, because man, that's just like an instant injection of just like the best stuff. And then also when you go back and reread these books, as I like to do, I like highlighting and underlining new things, because it's, to me, it echoes that thing of like, oh, I wasn't ready to understand this yet, and now this is speaking to me in a different way. But yeah, so those are some of those.
By the way, people, I'm going to just quote you some people in the chat right now. Rachel says, I think I'm learning more from Jake than I did getting my master's in TV production in college. You fools. Pay Jake. Yeah, what else?
Give me your tuition.
Around for my media studies classes. Yeah, true story. It's interesting to learn from the journeyman perspective rather than like to sort of ideological intellectual side. Like, it's easy to concept all this stuff out. It's a different thing when you're in the trenches and your sole goal is making something and getting it done.
Yeah,
these books are definitely, we'll put some links to go grab those too. We'll email out a list in more detail.
Yeah, and you can kind of go through, like, like, even if you don't want to make movies, if you're here, I'm assuming, like, in some aspect, like, you're interested in how they're made, and these are available, and they're incredible, and they're just full of knowledge. And I have In the Blink of an Eye on here, Walter Murch. He's a world famous editor. Like, read books about editing. Paul Hirsch was also an editor a long time ago. Oh, I have a typo. A long tome ago. So there you go, guys. It wouldn't be a Jake Abel joint if there wasn't just a massive amount of friggin' typos. In a cutting room far, far away. He cut Star Wars, and then his career blew up. But like The Power of Myth by Joseph Campbell, who was, like, I guess, like a historical theologian, sort of philosopher, but just like a kind of a history,
as an educator and as a researcher.
Yeah.
Down thousands of
right. So he did like The Hero of a Thousand Faces, which of course was used to write Star Wars. Anyway, like The Power of Myth, that's on this list, is not a filmmaking book by any standard, but it is a storybook, because it's about the power of myth through religion and folk tales throughout the history of mankind and how they've shaped us. And that's all storytelling. That's where all of our storytelling comes from. It came from the word of mouth. So that's why I have that on there as well. And then the last one I put on here, my first movie, is a super interesting one. This guy got together. He flew all around the world and interviewed filmmakers from like Oliver Stone to there's a whole mess of people in there, and he interviewed them strictly about their first movies, which I thought was like, it's such a cool concept. And to narrow it down, not to their biggest, most successful movies, but these directors' first films and their experience on them, because that's often the scariest one. So I think that's been invaluable to hear those stories of what it was like for people to go in for the first time. So that's sort of like that's the rundown.
Yeah, living through that butt sucking era, as you like to call it.
You gotta suck butts, and guess what? You're gonna be sucking. If you want to be in this industry, you're gonna suck butts for a long time. You're not gonna stop sucking butts. If you want to get ahead, you gotta suck a butt every once in a while, and that's just part of it.
Great advice, super good advice. Suck butts.
It's not advice. It's a fact of life.
No, it's a fact. Sure,
Charlie. It's not advice. I don't want to do it. I don't want it.
But there it is.
But you're gonna.
Oh God. Let's take a couple more questions, then we'll have to wrap up here and move on to our meet and greets. Our meet and greets will happen here, so just stick around in the same window as we did last time. So Emily asked a very controversial question.
Oh, great.
You're not allowed to not answer, okay? Just kidding. As an actor, when do you speak up when you disagree with a production-based choice? This is an actor.
All the time. I love it. Well, I guess, like, what's a production-based choice? Chime in there. My follow-up is, what is a production-based choice? Like set design? No. But like
like how a shot looks, or
Like how it show. Oh,
choice.
never. A line is how a line is written. Oh yeah, all the
Oh, here
time.
we go. I'm a
Oh
not a
man.
tomato would not do that, Jake.
Oh my God. I'm such a stickler for writing. I'm always cutting stuff and you know, respectfully, and I think I've learned how to do it more respectfully over the years. There was a show I did where there was a line that I hated it. I hated it, and I didn't want to say it, and I knew it was coming. And on the day, like I like went to the writer, and it's just like, look, I don't like here, I don't like it. He just like he wanted me to say it for whatever reason. Like it was like he really liked it. And I was just so frustrated, and but it just seemed like it wasn't going to happen. And there was the second AD or the first AD on that episode, and he knew, he was aware, and it wasn't like I wasn't angry or yelling. It was just like I was just kind of fighting for my character of like, it just sounds weird in my mouth. I don't believe it. And but it's kind of clearly seemed like I was going to have to say it, which I have a problem with authority, so I don't like that either. But the AD was like, he goes, "Hey man, some hills are worth dying on, some aren't." And it was very sage advice in that moment. And I think taught me a lot in that moment of like choosing your battles, choose. And then I said, guess what? I said the line, and no one gave a shit. No one's thinking about it. No one's like, oh, that was a weird line. Like I crushed it. But yeah, it was really important in that moment to be like, you can raise your concerns, but gauge when it's like, okay, there's a reason that this is like this, and I'll trust it. And oftentimes, you're not always right. For me though, it never comes from I try not to bring it from a place of ego, but a place of just like caring about the story and the finished product, and fighting for that. And there's times where like, with the host, we did Andrew Nichol, I love him so much. We had a table read. We had like two days of table reads with the whole cast. We went through word by word, and he adapted it off of Stephanie Meyer's book, and he was directing. So it's like it could be very precious to him. It's like he worked very hard to pare this book down to this movie. And here we are, a bunch of actors coming in being like, I have some ideas. And there was one thing, and I don't remember what it was particularly, but that's not the point. The point was I had raised a concern, and I was like, and this is why I think it should be this way. And he was like, okay. And then I kind of continued to be like, 'cause I felt like I needed to sort of qualify it even more. And he was like, I said, okay. I was like, got it. Like, and he's a friend, but like the way he said it, he was like, the way I forget how he said it, but it was very, very funny because he's like, I said I would do it, didn't I? And I was like, you're right. And that taught me in that moment too, of like, and this goes for any aspect of life. If you get an okay, shut the fuck up.
Yeah. Get the fuck out. Shut the fuck up.
Just shut it. Take the okay, and keep on going. Yeah, those are the stories that would be in my memoir. But but to bring it back, all of that is to say that's why, like, I think I have this sort of yearning to be a part of a story as more than just an actor, so that way, like, I can play in those sandboxes, and I can have more of a say in the ideas and that I think a film should go. And I think that's what's exciting, and working with other creatives at the top of their game and trusting them to bring their specialized knowledge to stuff. Like that friction, like that's so good for, as long as it's not ego based, it can really create some wonderful, wonderful stuff. If it's all easy, it's probably not going to be good. It's just not.
If it's too easy, it's not going to be good. It's a true story, and especially in a collaborative art like this, it's
yeah.
True.
Yeah, if it's a little painful and it's like, all right, this might be something, Anyway.
Well, amazing. Thank you so much. Again, check your emails for that list of books. And we'll also send out a link so you can buy those books and stuff, and just make sure you can get access to them, because I'm telling you, every writing, acting class I've ever been, these books have been featured in there. Like, and then there are some new ones that I've never seen before that when Jake describes them, I'm like, where has that been all my life? Like, this is,
I think this, when I read a new book that I haven't like heard about, or there was a book called Producer to Producer that I just finished, and I'm not sure if it's on this list. It is. Go me. Sometimes I think it's easy to avoid books because you're like, well, if it's not famous and I haven't heard people talking about it, then it must not be good, because there's a lot of schlock out there. But sometimes you just have to be the one that like goes, you know what, fine, I'll read it. I'll take the risk. And then in that, you're like, this is great. Why is nobody talking about this? Like, there's such great advice in here. There's great stories in here. So like, yeah, sometimes you just gotta say, screw it, I'm interested. And if it's bad, I won't use it. You know what I mean? Like, if the information is not applicable, then I would just go, I won't use that. Easy. Maybe there's one thing in there where you're like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. I love that. So, yeah.
Well, you know, people are really taking to your you gotta suck butts and shut the fuck up. So I feel like we've done some good work here.
I've done my job. I've done my job.
Your job. Saturday, well done. We're gonna move on to our meet and greets now. I see some of you have also submitted questions who are in the meet and greets. You can ask them there. Thanks to everybody for joining us. And if you are not part of the meet and greets, you want to just exit the vehicle at a high speed with your arms and hands to yourself. We're going to move on. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you all.